For more than 2 centuries, the office of the US president has been this incredible seat of power. Only a handful of people have held it, but their decisions have shaped not just a nation, but the entire world. But this role, it wasn't just created overnight, so we're going to dive into how it was invented, how it was tested, and how it's been transformed over time.
So far, we've had 46 presidents. Every single one of them has left their mark, right? They've had to navigate these incredible challenges, from the very birth of the Republic to, the crazy hyper-connected world we live in today.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? This isn't just about memorizing a list of names for a history test. This is the story of how one single job, a job that was invented completely from scratch, evolved into one of the most powerful and influential positions on the entire planet.
And that story? Well, it has to start with inventing the presidency itself. The first leaders, they had no blueprint, no instruction manual. They were literally defining the powers and limits of the office with every single move they made.
These first 5 presidents pretty much laid the entire groundwork. Take Washington, he set that super important 2-term tradition that lasted for 150 years. Jefferson, he literally doubled the size of the country with one single purchase. And Monroe, well, he set a bold new course for America on the world stage.
The Monroe Doctrine was a massive statement. I mean, think about it. You have this relatively young nation effectively telling the old, powerful empires of Europe, hey, the Western Hemisphere, that's our backyard now. This one policy would go on to shape US foreign relations for centuries. It's a huge deal.
But that early unity? Yeah, it wasn't gonna last. The nation began to tear itself apart over the issue of slavery, and that led to its greatest crisis, a war that would change the presidency forever.
And you can really see the problem right here. Congress kept trying to find some kind of middle ground, with these big compromises. But they were really just band-aids. Acts like these didn't actually solve the problem. They just kicked the can down the road, which honestly just made the war that was coming even more bitter.
So, into this completely fractured nation steps one of the most consequential figures in American history, Abraham Lincoln. And he would be the one tasked with leading the country through its darkest chapter.
Lincoln's entire presidency was just defined by the Civil War. His #1 mission was to hold the Union together. But in doing that, he also completely changed the nation's moral compass when he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. It was the beginning of the end for slavery, though his tragic assassination meant he would never get to see the nation fully heal.
The period that came next, Reconstruction, was just incredibly difficult. Lincoln's successor, Andrew Johnson, clashed so much with Congress over the rights of newly freed slaves that he actually became the first president to be impeached. Eventually, the promises of that era were pretty much abandoned when federal troops were pulled from the South, leaving behind a really complex and painful legacy.
So, after basically rebuilding itself from the inside out, America's focus began to shift. It was fueled by this new industrial might, and the nation stepped onto the global stage. The presidency was no longer just a domestic job, it was now the role of a world leader.
During this era, presidents had to deal with a whole new set of challenges. These huge corporate monopolies at home, and the big question of how to use American power abroad. Things like the Spanish-American War and building the Panama Canal were early signs of this big shift, which all led up to 2 world wars that cemented America's place as a global superpower.
You absolutely cannot talk about this era without talking about the 2 Roosevelts. Theodore, or Teddy, he was just a force of nature, busting up big companies, fighting for conservation, and projecting American power. And then his distant cousin, Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR. He would completely redefine the presidency itself, using the government to fight the Great Depression and, of course, lead the Allies to victory in World War II.
And get this, FDR was elected 4 times. That had never happened before. And because of a constitutional amendment, it will never happen again. It's really a testament to just how huge the crises he faced were and the profound trust the American people put in him to lead them through it all.
So that brings us to the modern era, where the presidency was shaped by totally new kinds of threats. We're talking nuclear anxiety, huge social upheaval, and the beginning of our interconnected world. Suddenly, the challenges for the person in the Oval Office became more complex than ever before. The Cold War created this new constant pressure. You had Truman, who had to make the world-altering decision to use atomic weapons. Then there was Eisenhower, who managed to tense peace while building the infrastructure of modern America. And of course, John F. Kennedy, whose presidency saw the world come to the absolute brink of nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis, just before his life was tragically cut short.
But the biggest threat to the modern presidency?
It didn't come from another country. It came from right inside the White House, with a scandal that would forever change how the public saw the presidency: Watergate.
And the whole scandal ended with something that was just unthinkable at the time. To avoid a guaranteed impeachment, Richard Nixon became the first and only president in U.S. history to resign from office. It was a moment that just shook the nation's trust in its highest office to the core.
About a decade later, the Cold War was reaching its climax, and Ronald Reagan, standing at the Brandenburg Gate in a divided Berlin, delivered this famous challenge. His assertive foreign policy is seen by many as one of the key things that helped speed up the collapse of the Soviet Union and bring the Cold War to an end.
The 21st century brought a whole new set of fast-moving challenges. George W. Bush's presidency was completely redefined overnight by 9/11 and the wars that followed. Barack Obama had to deal with the fallout from a financial crisis while passing huge healthcare reform. Donald Trump's America First agenda really challenged a lot of old ideas about trade and foreign policy. And Joe Biden's term has been shaped by the global pandemic and a major focus on climate change. Each one is just a reflection of a world that is changing incredibly fast.
So what all this really shows is that the presidency isn't some static, unchanging thing. It is constantly being reshaped, both by the person in the office and by the unique pressures of their time. And you know what? That story is far from over.
Just think about this for a second. For over 100 years, Grover Cleveland was the only president to serve 2 terms that weren't back-to-back. Now, Donald Trump has become the second. It just proves that even historical precedents that are a century old can be revisited. The role just keeps changing in ways we might not expect.
From George Washington just trying to figure out what the job was, all the way to the leaders navigating our complex world today, the presidency has always been a reflection of America's journey. So after seeing how it's all evolved, we'll leave you with a question. Which leader do you think left the biggest mark on the nation and on the office itself?